the journey into imagination is not gone, and that's one thing that I'm hesitant to do episodes on for Defunctland, is because it's still there, kind of. I mainly deal with just extinct rides, but do you consider, Ron, that it's gone? Do you think that the original intention and the original ride is gone, or do you think
it's gone? It's completely gone. The message. See, Epcot Center was supposed to be an inspirational park. The Imagination Pavilion showed you where everything else in Epcot came from, where everything in the world came from, because it all comes from the imagination, from creativity, and so that's gone. That is gone.
On October 1st, 1982, the second park at Walt Disney World opened to the public. The then named Epcot Center was the third Disney park to be built, and the first to stray away from the Magic Kingdom style. The Imagineers took Epcot in a different direction than Walt Disney's original experimental prototype Community of Tomorrow, choosing to create a theme park reminiscent of a classic World's Fair. While Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom promoted the idea of fantasy and the power of story, Epcot would showcase the importance of technological and cultural progress. In the Future World section of the park, pavilions were planned themed around the major concepts supporting society, such as transportation, energy, communication, technology, and the environment. However, there was an outlier. A large building featuring two large glass pyramids, named the Imagination Pavilion. It was much less tangible of an idea than the ocean or computers, but the execution made its inclusion clear, and its development had started nearly a decade prior.
Walt Disney's pledge that Disneyland would never be completed now rests with a new generation of designers, like Tony Baxter.
I started with Disneyland back when in my first year of college, and I was employed out there as an ice cream scooper. And it wasn't that I wanted to scoop ice cream, but I really wanted to work at Disneyland.
In the mid-1970s, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad was entering development at Disneyland. The project was the first spearheaded by Imagineering legend Tony Baxter. It was to replace the Mine Train through Nature's Wonderland, a Frontierland train ride featuring animated animals. This took up a lot of the area's land, and the plans for Big Thunder still left plenty of space for other attractions.
Disneyland is around 80 developed acres. In addition to that are these 30 acres up here, 35, that have nothing in them.
Baxter didn't want to leave this section of the park unutilized, so he created an extension to Big Thunder's story that would provide a wonderful blueprint for a new land to be named Discovery Bay. Since Big Thunder Mountain had gold within it, Baxter concocted a story of what the lucky miners would do after finding their fortune. The man that survived the mine's collapse was Jason Chandler, a young innovator that would continue to head west with his wealth, founding Discovery Bay and funding the inventions of the explorers and scientists that resided there. This steampunk dream would feature attractions such as a Nautilus simulator and underwater restaurant, a dark ride shooter inside of a fireworks factory, and an attraction called Professor Marvel's Gallery of Wonders. This animatronic show was to feature the unique Carousel Theater rotating show building that other Disney attractions, the Carousel of Progress and America Sings utilized. The compelling inventor Professor Marvel would put on a musical showcase featuring his wacky experiments and his fantastical animals, one of which was his trusty pet dragon.
Discovery Bay is kind of a once-only place in time. It's a Victorian place that occurred at the turn of the century. It's the kind of place that Jules Verne or H.G. Wells might have inhabited. So you'll actually be able to, for instance, board the Nautilus and have a very elegant meal down below the water while you're being serenaded on the pipe organ and looking out at all the scenic wonders of the ocean floor from those overhead windows. This is just one of the adventures that might go into here. There's like I said, a flight on an aerial suspended monorail system that looks like a dirigible, and a time machine.
The Discovery Bay concept was announced in 1976, but it unfortunately never came to fruition. Disney had a lot on their plate as they neared the new decade, including the construction of Epcot and their first park overseas, Tokyo Disneyland. This, and the failure of the 1974 film, an adaptation of Jules Verne's The Island at the Top of the World, is most likely the reason the Discovery Bay does not rest along the rivers of America today. But Baxter's concepts were too unique and interesting to be forgotten, and he attempted to implement them into his next project. As development on Epcot began, Baxter was given the opportunity to design the Land Pavilion, which was to be sponsored by a logging company. Baxter's design put an emphasis on agriculture and mankind's usage of resources, all while displaying the beauty of Earth's nature. The show building was comprised of 7 towering crystals, 5 of which would feature different environments that guests could walk through. The pavilion's main attraction was to be called the Blueprints of Nature, a suspended dark ride that took guests on a hot air balloon ride over the different habitats of the world. The finale of the ride would lift guests through the largest crystal to give them a view of the walk-through habitats surrounding the pavilion. This was Baxter's attempt to salvage a concept for a Discovery Bay attraction, the Western Balloon Ascent, that would have allowed guests breathtaking views while transporting them to Fantasyland. The original Land Pavilion was another brilliant concept by Baxter, but once again, it was not to be. The land lost its sponsor, and Kraft Foods quickly replaced them. Kraft was more interested in a pavilion focused on agriculture and food production, and Baxter's concept was scrapped in favor of attractions such as Living with the Land and the now defunct Kitchen Cabaret. Of course, Baxter wasn't about to let his ideas die, and his third attempt was the charm.
Hello. We're having a wonderful time, and best of all, we'll be saving all of it to enjoy again and again. You can too with a Brownie movie camera like this. I was just taking a picture of David and Ricky on Tom Sawyer's raft. Now I'll get one of Ozzie enjoying himself in his own way. That picture will be a big hit at our house.
You can get a Brownie movie camera for only $32.50 or as little as $3.50 down. Remember, Brownie movie cameras are made by Kodak, and the surest way to better movies is to insist on that name, Kodak.
Kodak, a longtime sponsor of Disney parks, was set to sponsor the pavilion located directly south of the Land Pavilion. The topic had not been chosen for the pavilion, and Kodak just wished for something imaginative. This caused Baxter to consider reviving another concept from Discovery Bay, Professor Marvel and his pet dragon, who would lead guests on a ride signifying the importance of imagination. Baxter and his team were aware audiences would not enjoy a lecture on the concept, so they did their best to create a world of fantasy that would inspire guests to use their own imaginations. The ride was able to use some of the steampunk-era designs left over from Discovery Bay, and they even snuck a few hot air balloons and fireworks in there as well. Baxter tweaked the story of the Professor and Dragon to the memorable Dreamfinder and Figment. Dreamfinder would be a friendly bearded man with a Santa Claus-esque jolliness to him, and Figment would be a cute dragon that Dreamfinder had conjured from his creativity. Baxter recalls that he got the idea for Figment from an episode of the television series Magnum P.I., where a character whose lawn had been chewed by a goat was told that it was a figment of his imagination.
And don't tell me it's a figment of my imagination. Figments don't eat rare tropical flowers. Mine have been decimated.
Baxter became enthralled by the word, as it was easily recognizable yet not fully utilized in any major way at the time. The late Imagineer Ex Intencio and others also had a part in bringing the figment that audiences found when the attraction opened to life, with his 2 tiny wings, eyes big and yellow, horn of a steer, and a lovable fellow. After the ride's topic and characters were created, the Imagineers created various sections of the dark ride, each focusing on a different medium that imagination helps create. The original theme song of the ride was recorded by frequent Disney songwriter Robert Mullen.
Let's all take a journey into imagination, where inspiration goes far beyond our world of space and time.
But this was rejected, and the even more frequent Disney songwriters, the Sherman Brothers, were hired instead. They composed the theme song, entitled One Little Spark, that had different variations sung throughout the ride. The attraction was to originally have 2 steep drops to add some excitement to the ride system, but these were removed during construction. The attraction also featured a unique variation to the classic Omnimover ride system used in many Disney attractions. This version included separate 4-car trains that could move at different speeds independently from the other trains at different points in the ride. The attraction was to have fog machines to give the illusion the guests were floating on a cloud, but these did not last long as the fog would have damaged the sets. With the elements designed and construction beginning, Journey into Imagination was already showing its brilliance. But Epcot's opening day was approaching fast, and the Imagineers were far behind schedule.
As
we talk about tomorrow, here's a bulletin for you. There is no imagination crisis in this country, especially here at Disney World. We've gathered a panel of imagination experts just to prove it.
Hello there, Brian. Good to have you here at Epcot.
And who is Dreamfinder?
Well, I'm kind of the host of the Journey into Imagination show out here at Epcot Center. I travel all over the universe, collecting the stuff dreams are made of. Sounds, colors, ideas, anything that sparks the imagination. And I store these sparks in the Journey into Imagination Pavilion. And the guests and I recombine them into new ideas and new inspirations.
I am left to assume that you do not dream alone. Who's your little purple
Well,
friend?
this is actually something I dreamed of. This is my figment, and I'm very proud of him. You see, I threw together the two tiny wings, the nose of a crocodile, the horns of a dilemma, and all the calm and reserve of a small child's birthday party.
The Imagination Pavilion began construction a mere 15 months before Epcot's opening. The pavilion was to feature 3 main attractions: the signature dark ride, its post-show, and the 3D film Magic Journeys. Per Kodak's contract with Disney, one of these 3 attractions was required to operate on opening day. Journey into Imagination was experiencing a few snags with construction on top of the already short window the team was given to create the ride. Journey's post-show, the interactive playground ImageWorks, featured state-of-the-art interactive technology. The Imagineers hadn't worked out all of the kinks in the complex walkthrough attraction, so it wouldn't be ready for Epcot's October 1st opening either. Finally, the 3D film Magic Journeys, also using groundbreaking technology to create 3D effects, was running behind schedule. The Imagineers were out of options. Something had to be open at the pavilion. Their solution was to shoot a short promotional film using the strolling Dreamfinder, played by Ron Schneider, who was still developing the popular walk-around character at the time. The short film was to play in the Magic Eye Theater and was to show a preview of the unfinished Magic Journeys.
Figment, my impatient young friend, you can't rush creativity. Takes time to do things right.
Uh-huh. And isn't now the time for a preview of the Magic Journey film?
By golly, you're right. I'd better hurry along.
Now, Dreamfinder? The glasses?
Now, Figment. And all our friends in the audience, too. With special glasses on, now we can all enjoy a preview of Magic Journeys.
However, this film was not used, because less than a week before Epcot's opening, Magic Journeys was ready. 2 months later, ImageWorks would open the pavilion's main doors. Visitors would walk past the queue for the unfinished dark ride, make their way up the stairs, and be given a view of Epcot through the glass pyramids. They could then enter the playground of the future. There were a variety of activities in which guests could interact with the technology. This included Dreamfinder School of Drama, an attraction that allowed guests to star in a movie with Dreamfinder via a pre-recorded film and blue screen. In these films, Dreamfinder was played by the then young Imagineer Joe Rohde. Guests were given the option of 3 films: Enchanted Travelers, Wily Wizard the Cranky King, a fantasy, Deputies and the Return of Sagebrush, a western, or Acrobatic Astronauts and Galactic Getaway, a sci-fi film. During the 2013 D23 Expo, Tony Baxter gave a presentation on the former attractions of Disney parks. Included was an early test of the western overlay of Dreamfinder School of Drama, starring Baxter and his Imagineering team.
This is Joe Rohde, in case you have audio. Audio?
Drama. With the help of this magical blue stage
Joe Rohde
and your imagination, we're going to travel back to the days of the Old West.
You were all 12. This was pretty advanced, though, even up in the air. For 1980 to sandwich a lifetime video between a foreground plate and a background plate and do it every 4 minutes all day long was pretty advanced. We shot this all at the Billy Graham Studios in Hollywood, non-union, and a lot of the performers there worked at Disneyland, and all the costuming came from Disneyland costuming. And Joe, we got for free.
We can catch him! Grab the rope and tug!
Guests could also manipulate giant kaleidoscopes mounted on the wall. The electronic philharmonic allowed guests to conduct an orchestra by waving their hands within a sensor. On the other side of this was the dressing room for the strolling Dreamfinders. The Magic Palette allowed guests to draw in pictures on computer screens. Probably the most famous part of ImageWorks was the entrance to the sensor maze, the Rainbow Corridor. This was used in a lot of promotional material and also provided the backdrop to a famous picture of Michael Jackson. These are just a few of the interactive attractions ImageWorks offered, and the lineup was updated and changed throughout the years. The pavilion was also known for its array of fountains located in front of the entrances. The jumping and leapfrog fountains provided the perfect introduction to the tone of the pavilion as guests approached it. 5 months after Epcot's opening, Imagineers were putting the finishing touches on the dark ride. Figment and Dreamfinder had already been introduced to guests through promotional material, strolling actors, and the various attractions in ImageWorks. But with the grand opening of the ride approaching, they were about to become legends.
Where do you come from originally?
I come from somebody's imagination, where all wonderful and incredibly fantastic things come from.
He hasn't been programmed for modesty.
I think you're absolutely right. Somebody was telling me that about a character named Dreamfinder who lives in the Imagination Pavilion.
That is correct, Master King.
And he is the latest creation, I hear, and a real expert on the subject of creativity.
Uh-huh.
You suppose I could meet him?
Your wish is my command, Master K. Dreamfinder, this is Master K and Drew. Drew and Master K, meet the keeper of the sparks of imagination, Dreamfinder.
It's nice to meet you. And this is my assistant and good right arm, Figment.
I understand you're in charge of some very creative things. I would think that would be terribly interesting.
Right you are, for right in there, imagination's everywhere. The visions once inside your head exist inside that place instead. Imagination is my game, the sparks of which ignite the flame of your own creativity. And that's real great for you and me.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Want to go inside?
I sure do.
Journey into imagination has Dreamfinder and his impish friend Figment, whisking you through words, sounds, colors, and facts that lead you to new ideas and thoughts. After Figment and Dreamfinder, you're left to test your own skills of imagination.
On March 5th, 1983, 4 months after ImageWorks opened, Journey into Imagination would debut. Guests lined up and faced long wait times to embark on their flight of fantasy. Guests entering the pavilion were immediately confronted with the loading station. After boarding, they would encounter a projected silhouette of Dreamfinder on his elaborate flying vehicle, the Dreamcatcher. The vehicles then enter a giant turntable, with the cars turning to face the center, where the Dreamfinder himself welcomes guests by singing One Little Spark and introducing Figment. This turntable was the most unique element of the ride. The Omnimover vehicles locked into the scene, moving along the circular path perfectly with the Dreamcatcher. There were actually 5 identical scenes created, all playing simultaneously. This means 5 Dreamfinders, 5 Dreamcatchers, 5 of everything was encompassed in the carousel. Walls separated the sections, as the effects and sounds from the scenes ahead and behind would have bled into one another. This long scene lasted around 3 minutes before guests exited the turntable and headed into the Dreamport to deposit all of the ideas that Figment and the Dreamfinder had created. The Dreamport featured wacky measurement tools and odd contraption used to capture the sparks of inspiration. Guests then entered the art section, a beautifully sculpted room in which the Dreamfinder and Figment used their imaginations to create works of art, with Dreamfinder holding a giant glowing paintbrush. The murals and sculptures were brightly lit with changing colors. After the guests twisted through the art section, they would enter the realm of literature. Here they encountered Dreamfinder playing an organ made of letters. He sang as he wrote a mystery novel. This area is much more dark and sinister than the previous section, but this is only because Dreamfinder has imagined it so. A fun effect in this room was Figment holding 3 blocks spelling cat, with the projection behind him changing from a cat to a bat as he turned the block to spell the new word. The next section was performance, a much more lively area featuring Figment in a tuxedo and Dreamfinder conducting a light show. Next was a dark futuristic area for science, with Figment dressed as a hitchhiking astronaut. Dreamfinder was in a lab coat doing research by viewing educational films. There was also a projection of an animated Figment, his body size being manipulated as he learns the power of dreams. Guests then enter the final show scene. The vehicles rotated around Figment, accompanied by videos playing puppet versions of himself using his imagination in different ways, singing the chorus of One Little Spark alone for the first time. Guests then see Dreamfinder for the final time, behind a giant camera filming Figment, inviting guests to use their imagination and ImageWorks. Guests then disembark and exit the ride. Journey into Imagination was one of Disney's longest and most elaborate dark rides of all time. Dreamfinder and Figment would become a highlight of guest trips, and make frequent appearances in special events and television specials. There was something for everyone, between the state-of-the-art technology and effects, the beautiful sculptures and artwork, the lovable Dreamfinder and Figment, and the unforgettable Sherman Brothers song. It was truly one of the greatest rides ever produced by Disney, and it all started with Tony Baxter's One Little Spark of Imagination. However, on October 10th, 1998, Epcot's beacon of creativity and wonder would be extinguished. The closure of Journey into Imagination perplexed guests, and its replacement turned that confusion into full-on outrage. How could this have possibly happened? And what, or who, was responsible?
The story continues on Yesterworld, where you can watch the second and final part to the history of Journey into Imagination. Picking up right where Kevin left off, we'll explore the events that led to the attraction's closure, its controversial successors, as well as the fate of Dreamfinder, Figment, and the Imagination Pavilion as a whole. Click here to watch part 2 now.
Well, a dream never spoils, Figment, because every time you dream it, it becomes as new and fresh as the day it was born. So keep dreaming your dreams out there. We'll keep them safe here until they come true. And they will. Bye-bye. Say goodbye, Figment.
Goodbye, Figment.